The 30th of November. I'm Stephen Ridgway with a bit of a cold. If I sound a bit croaky, it's just the weather. So I don't know how you pronounce this. Rhysida, RHYSIDA ransomware group has hacked the King Edward VII Hospital in London. So we've heard a little bit about the Rhysida, however it is pronounced, group recently. So I would suggest having a little dig into what this group does, understand some of the TTPs. They do look like they are after notable, I think newsworthy targets. They're the group behind the British Library compromise and also the China Energy Engineering Corporation. That's hard to say. China Energy Engineering Corporation. They're claiming to have as victims on their Tor leak site. They've been active since May this year, so a relatively new group, and they have, according to their Tor site, got something over 60 organizations that they've managed to compromise. They appear to be focusing on well, in fact, quite broad rather than focus. They have a broad approach to who they target. So education, healthcare, manufacturing, information technology, and government sectors have all been targeted by them. So it is, I think, a very good idea to make sure that whatever security event visibility tooling that you've got, you have incorporated into that the indicators of compromise and the TTPs to threat hunt for this particular group, and yeah, keep your eyes open and keep well informed, I would say. Zoom has patched and fixed a vulnerability which allows attackers to take over Zoom Rooms. Now, Zoom Rooms is a cloud-based conferencing platform by Zoom, and there's a vulnerability that was originally discovered in June this year, but the details have only been made public as of November the 28th, so a couple of days ago. Basically, when you create a Zoom room, Zoom creates a service account. Up until they fixed this, the service account email the service account would be sent an email, okay, with a predictable in a predictable format, which is basically room __ account ID at companydomain.com, effectively. Now, if you have got control over companydomain.com, I'm guessing, you could then intercept that email, but equally, you could create an arbitrary Outlook email address that matches the room format and use it to follow the Zoom sign up flow. So basically, this is because they were sending an activation link to a predictable email address. There are better ways of doing this stuff, and they don't do this anymore. However, it is something to be aware of, mainly because targeting service accounts is something that we don't hear a lot being talked about, but actually is a very effective way of getting access at a level that you would perhaps have to go through various other steps to get to if you were attacking things in different ways. So, service accounts are notorious for being difficult to manage from an IT infrastructure perspective. So you need these things. A lot of organizations simply use a known administrator account in place of a service account. good organizations, some of the ones I've worked with in the past, have actually gone to the trouble of working out what rights a particular rights and privileges a particular service needs, and create a specific service account for every application or every system that requires a service account in order to run. Now that's good. You then, of course, have the trouble about what do you do about password management, because these things are service accounts, so you can't very easily put MFA on them or whatever. So we are kind of back to, well, long, complex passwords. Password changing on service accounts can be an absolute pain in the arse. I have had to do that in the past. I think password changing these days is not seen as a particularly effective defense. However, I think perhaps the other side of it would be then, well, long complex passwords, even to the point where the password itself is auto-generated and not known in one way, is not a bad thing, perhaps. And then proper visibility and auditing on the use of the account. So if it starts being used for things you wouldn't expect, then have a procedure by which it's investigated and maybe the password changed or the account disabled or whatever it might be. But service accounts. Keep an eye on service accounts. They're often overlooked, but are a good target if you have malicious intent. So in other matters, Okta, the data breach from October. So this was Okta's support site or support system data breach. I think originally Okta claimed that a very limited number of Okta customers, 130 something, I think, Okta customers were details were compromised. That has been adjusted upwards to, well, pretty much all of them, in fact. So they reckon that so now they're reckoning that something like 99% or more of customer data that was accessed didn't get very much, but they are now talking about the fact that it was pretty much everybody's data if you have used Okta support, if your data was in the system. So depending on what information Okta held about you, that may be just limited to usernames or whatever it might be, but it could be various other things. I think the key point, though, with this is that armed with that information, it makes it much easier to generate targeted phishing emails. So I think it's quite likely that the data itself isn't particularly concerning. However, if a threat actor knows that you use Okta and is good at creating convincing phishing campaigns, you may well find yourself being targeted. I certainly, if I was in a threat group, that's something I would definitely consider, because if you manage to trick somebody into giving you access to their Okta information, you then potentially have access to all sorts of other systems, which maybe in fact almost definitely would be the actual target systems. So yeah, if you are an Okta customer and you have used their support system in the past, recommend that you are vigilant, particularly vigilant around phishing that appears to come from Okta. Do check that it really is. If you're not expecting something from from Okta, then it is possible that it may be phishing targeted at you. Also, the usual stuff is good. Don't give away your passwords if people ask for them. Check that the sites, if you're asked to log into a site, check the site you're logging into actually is the site that you think it is. Using MFA is great. There are ways by which that can be subverted. If you have gone to a fake site and you enter MFA, it is entirely possible that the attacker in charge of the fake site may grab your MFA token and use it on the real site in real time. It's not, MFA is not a solution to all ills, but it does make things a lot harder. Keep an eye out for phishing based around that Okta breach. And then finally from me today, the US has seized Bitcoin mixer Sinbad.io. Now Sinbad.io is a site which is basically it's a popular Bitcoin mixer service. The idea being, I am actually struggling to see what a legitimate use of this site would be, but basically it's used by criminal groups in order to launder money. Now, this particular site has been used by Lazarus Group quite extensively. It does look like, Sinbad.io, I think, is very similar to a previous site, which I can't remember the name of, something like Mixer.io or something like along those lines. Yeah, Blender. Sorry, not the Blender.io was a previous site that was sanctioned by the US authorities for money laundering. The Lazarus Group, North Koreans, just in case you weren't aware, they have, it appears, stolen something like $2 billion worth of digital assets during their operating history. So we are not talking about, when we talk about these groups and financial crime, digital stealing cryptocurrency and so on. This is not happening on a small scale. This is happening on absolutely enormous scale, and they've got to do something with this stuff, right? So as you know, cryptocurrency is far from anonymous. You can trace where everything goes. However, if you go through some of these mixer services, it all gets broken up and shuffled around so much that it effectively obfuscates transactions. It's not impossible to pick these things out again and work out what's happened, but it is significantly harder. Looks like Sinbad.io was not only used for financial crime, but also as a tool employed for obfuscating transactions associated with sanctions evasion, drug trafficking, child abuse materials, and sale of illicit things on the internet. So if by any chance you have been using Sinbad.io, you will, I'm sure, have seen that it has been seized already. But I think if not, as most of us aren't doing these sorts of things, it's good to know that the authorities are on top of this stuff, although it is difficult for them to keep it, keep on top of everything that's going on. But it does look like they've had a success in this particular case. I suppose, as a final thing on that one, there are some as a consequence of the authorities grabbing Sinbad.io. So just be a little bit cautious that, excuse me, that although the actual site may have been taken down, there are even dodgier sites that will try to fire up off the back of this sort of stuff. Anyway, that's all from me today. Slightly rambling today, but never mind. I hope you have a great day, and I'll speak to you all again tomorrow morning.